Welcome back to another episode of the TikTok Famous Podcast. Today on the podcast, I have someone that I follow religiously on TikTok, Mayawanderlust, and she is here to talk about all things being a paramedic and the things that she's seen and the Rodeo Grodeo. So stay with us.
You're listening to the TikTok Famous Podcast, where viral fame meets raw reality. Join your host, Meredyth as she dives deep with your favorite creators to uncover the real stories behind the scroll, the highs, the lows, the algorithm chaos, and everything in between. This is not your average interview. This is the TikTok Famous Podcast.
Okay, so we're trying it again. Thank you so much for not giving up on me, Maya.
Thank you for not giving up on me. I'm not really sure what the problem is, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you back. So we started talking about the reasons that you got into being a paramedic, because that is a lot of the stuff that you share on social media. So if you can say again, so we can see and hear you, of course you just disappeared, but hopefully I'm still hearing you.
Yes.
Why you decided to be a paramedic?
So that story goes back all the way to me being a kid. My father was a brittle diabetic growing up. And one day we had gotten into a car accident, and that was my first experience with the 911 system. And what I distinctly took away from that experience was a singular paramedic on scene held my hand during that entire time. I was probably about 8 years old, and did not let go of my hand from the beginning of patient care, where they were cutting me out of the vehicle, to the point of putting me in the bed. And I had just moved to that city at the time. And my friend from the town I was moving from had given me a necklace. It was like a best friendship necklace that little kids have. And I had lost it in the car accident. And I was so distraught because this was a new place. A car accident is very scary to an 8-year-old. And I had lost it in the wreckage of the car accident. That paramedic had gone back to the scene, retrieved the necklace for me, and then brought it to me at the hospital. And I knew from that point on, that's what I wanted to do.
Wow. Those types of memories, there's so many people that I talk to on my podcast of like that singular moment that just shaped their life forever.
Yes.
And I know from listening to your stories about being a paramedic, there's so many times that I've listened to, like, so your playlist is called, that's a good question, actually, the Grodeo Rodeo. Why did you name it that? I have a feeling I know why, but why did you name it that?
So I'm going to preface with the fact that the Grodeo Rodeo was completely accidental. It was never supposed to blow up into what it became, but I just started talking about what it was to do this job and be a first responder. And people were like, you should make this a thing. And I was like, well, what would I call it? And I'm pretty sure, because I don't want to take full credit, I'm pretty sure that somebody in the comment section was like, well, it's pretty grody. And I'm like, well, it is a rodeo. And then I was like, that's the name of it. That's what it's going to be called, because it is a roller coaster, a rodeo of up and downs in icks and yucks. And so it just stuck from there and just kind of started snowballing as it did.
Yeah. And I mean, you're living this every single day, basically, of going into people's homes, which to me, that was always the thing that got me so much with your stories is, walking up the 20,000 flights of steps sometimes. And you're tiny. Like, we can't see you right now, but I'm good with that. Let's keep the sound. You're a tiny person, and a lot of times you have these huge guys or whatever with you as your co-partner paramedic person.
Absolutely.
And you always seem to be the one to do the crazy thing. Why?
So I am tiny. I am barely touching 5 foot.
Wow.
But I was also raised and brought up in a family of tiny, ferocious women, and was instilled in me at a young age, you can do anything the big boys can.
Yeah.
So I have always lived my life that way. I have always been a big personality in the room. And And I think that meshes pretty well what I've chosen to do with my life, because you do need to be that big in order to do this career. You can't be small, you can't be meek, you can't stay in a corner. You have to be an innovative maverick in order to be successful in this.
Yeah. And to me, I love the way that you weave in the chaos, but also the incredible humanity of I remember there was one story you were talking about, and it was like an older woman wearing, I believe it was like a thin nightgown, and she was like not doing well. And it was, you had to get her to the hospital. I don't remember if she was fighting you. This is a long time ago. This is when I first started following you. And like you bring the humor, but you also bring this humanity of these people, if it not for paramedics, if it not for hospitals and doctors and nurses and staff, these people would starve. They would die alone in a house. They would die of sometimes, I mean, it sounds like you're going in to help people that are basically rotting. I know that
Yeah,
sounds, but it's true.
yeah. Um, there there is a lot to this job that does not get explained to you in training. That is absolutely kind of a hard knocks lesson of what humanity really is.
Yeah.
I think I've become a lot more in touch with who I am as a human being and what my needs are as a human being through helping other people through things I couldn't possibly have imagined outside of this job. Um, Being a first responder, I'm going to include all of first response, not just being a paramedic or an EMT. Being a first responder means you are privy to seeing some pretty horrific things that the general public can't even imagine or fathom seeing. And it forces you, it aligns you with really having to come to terms with the fact that it can be a singularity type of experience. However, you're not alone because you have your partner, a crew, your fellow coworkers who are all experiencing the same thing. So even though it can feel very polarizing at times,
Mhm.
you do have a safety net that you can count on to understand and relate to the experiences you've had.
Yeah, and I mean, some of your situations have been extremely dangerous. Someone that's on some crazy drug
Yes.
and has the superhuman strength, and here are you, like, barely 5 foot, and you're having to wrestle, restrain for the person's own good, for their
Yes.
health, for their safety, for their life. Um, did you ever when you were growing up because I always feel like we're put in situations that give us the view that we might not have had. And so when you were growing up, did you ever think in a million years that people got this sick or were this bad off? And do you feel like your path has been this so that you can have this like very beyond realistic view of the world?
Yeah. I don't think anybody comprehends how sick people can be unless you've had like a personal experience, which pretty much everybody in their lifetime will have a personal experience that familiarizes you with what death and dying looks like, right?
Yeah.
Whether that is a sibling, a family member, your parent, a friend, everybody understands that the concept of death is very finite. Um, but watching it actively happen to people on a
Yeah.
day in and day out basis, I don't want to say that it um, numbs you. I think some people allow it to, but I also think it offers you an opportunity to see how beautiful your life really can be if you just take the opportunity to live it.
Yeah.
And I am exposed a lot of the time to people who didn't take that opportunity to live it. So it's really a daily reminder that I got to make the most of this journey. I don't know how long I'm here. I don't
Yeah.
know how much I'll get to enjoy, but while I am here, I should enjoy everything that I can.
When you're looking at these people that are having these profound negative impacts of things like alcohol or drugs,
Yeah.
I have a friend, acquaintance at this point that I went to high school with, and they became a firefighter. And um, the life that they saw, people heating their houses with stoves,
Yes.
2, 3 families per house just to try to make ends meet. It actually made that person more racist and more angry,
Mhm.
which I find fascinating because it's like, how are you not getting what you're seeing? But everybody has their own, like, I pulled myself up, so you should too. And because
Yep.
you're not, you're a bad person. Um, when you see these people dealing with drugs and alcohol, like, are you like, hello, like, this is a major problem? Are you out there preaching in the streets, or how does the drugs and alcohol affect you?
Um, Again, I think it's put me a lot more in touch with my humanity. I don't understand how people choose to walk a path of being it seems elective,
Right.
electively choosing to look the other way and judge people through a hardship. As often as you see it, how do you not identify it as an epidemic that you need to have compassion for as opposed to being critical of?
Yeah.
um
Maybe because it's easy. I think when people do that,
yeah,
it's always like, if I judge it, then I'm away from it. It's like that
yeah,
whole othering thing. Like, those people over there are monsters. Those people over there are, drug addicts and dopes do
yes.
dope and all that
It
kind of
could
stuff.
never
So
be me. It could
it could
never
never
happen to
be.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is it can happen to anybody. I've seen plenty of first responders, plenty of doctors, plenty of nurses who fall into that. And it's not hard to fall into because of what you're exposed to, how many hours you're working a day, how often you get to see your family or not. There are a
Yeah.
lot of outside factors that contribute to people falling into those type of lifestyles. I think that the argument is, well, people choose to do drugs and people choose to drink alcohol. Yeah, but the that's not the real epidemic you need to worry about. The real underlying issue is why. Why was
Mm.
that the coping mechanism that they went to? Why was that the thing that worked for them? And it's
Well, and also
because
we have to look back to, the beginnings of Oxy. I mean, they have a whole Netflix documentary on it,
mhm,
and how people were just prescribed Oxy like it was candy. I
yes.
remember when I lived in New Jersey, so this had to be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like 13 or so years ago. And we had all this Oxy in our house. Like, every time you went for anything, you got like a gallon-sized bottle of Oxy.
Hmm.
And in my hometown in Ohio, and I actually just saw it here in Chicago the other day. It was like a turn-in program. Like, you could turn in all your pharmaceuticals to the local police station, so you're not flushing them down the toilet, throwing them in the garbage, keeping them in your house, if whatever.
Hmm.
And I took this gaggle of prescriptions of Oxy to the police station. They just looked at me. They're like, "What do you want us to do with that?" And I'm like, "Well, I have young preteens, and I don't want it in the house, but I don't want to flush it, and I feel weird throwing it in the garbage." They're like, "Just put it in a can of coffee and throw it in the trash." And I was just like, "Okay."
You're like, that'll
But
work.
I know. But I mean, if you look at, like, most of the people that I know that have drug problems, so to speak, it started with an injury. It
Yeah.
started with a prescription of Oxy that numbed the pain. It numbed
Yes.
all the pain. And
Yes.
then the doctor stopped giving them the prescription. And now we're seeing prescriptions only written for 3 days, which I think is probably the smartest thing. But then I guess if you're in constant pain, what do you do? But
Yeah.
I think it starts somewhere, and then it numbs everything, and you're like, "Hells to the yes, this is the best I've ever felt in my whole life."
Yes. And that's the thing is everybody wants to feel good. Nobody wants to feel like crap. Nobody wants to be in pain. Nobody wants to be depressed. So can you really fault and judge people because a lot of people have chemical imbalances in their brain? If you don't suffer from that, I love that for you,
Yeah.
right? Like that's phenomenal. Count yourself lucky and call it a blessing that you've never had to experience that. But for people who want to feel what you feel at baseline, how do you really sit there with a critical pointing finger and fault them for that.
Yeah. I'm starting to learn, just through talking to people and that are not in my circle, right? They're not sitting where I'm sitting in the house that I'm sitting in. They have all these different experiences. And it's like everyone's experience is so profoundly different, from growing up to the work life to, their chemistry.
Hmm.
I just had on it was what the heck's her name now? I'm blacking out. She has complete androgen insensitivity disorder. She was Mrs. USA in 2022, and I'm of course Jackie Blankenship. I just had her on, and she was talking to me. So her body like does not recognize testosterone at all.
Oh, wow.
So she was like in the womb going to be a boy, but her body didn't know there was no testosterone to quote make her a boy. So everything grew as a girl. It's fascinating.
That's amazing.
It's fascinating. You have to go. Miss Jackie Blanks is her at.
Okay.
And so she was talking about the fact that there are 40 different like chemical XY chromosome situations where your body is created and forms and grows these different sensitivities based on estrogen and testosterone and progesterone, which then create this, that, and the other. And I'm like, think about how many of us are not tested, but like, aren't cis or are transgender or are have these different ways. Like everyone
Hmm.
has such different chemistry in their brain, and
Yes.
dopamine and serotonin, and fast and slow and depressed and all these things. And as a society, we're like, you're either good or you're bad, you're either right or you're fixed or you're broken. And
Hmm.
it's like when you're in the trenches like you are, you're over there going, y'all don't understand any of
Yeah.
this.
It's so much more complicated than just having one side of the line or the other.
Yes. But I think
Yep.
that makes people comfortable. Like, I know my POV, as we say on social, right? I know my perspective, and you should be able to match that. And I have a relative that I've, like they grew up in a white society, they went to a white college, and they're like, you should be able to do all the things. And then they get a job with all sorts of different people, and they're like, I get it now. Like,
Hmm.
not everybody's parents were a stay-at-home parent, not everybody could borrow money, not everybody has the brains and the ambition and the self-worth to go to college or trade school or whatever. Like everybody has such a different experience. And I think that when you're out in the real world dealing with the public, especially as a paramedic, a nurse, a doctor, you see all the challenges that everybody else just poo-poos.
Hmm. Yes, I would tend to agree. I think that um, people who are stuck thinking one way or another, whether that's having an opinion or a belief, and it really transcends all of your opinions and belief, however you choose to think and view the world.
Yeah.
I think that if you are stuck in thinking one way, it's because you've never challenged yourself to look at it through any other lens.
Yeah.
You've tunnel visioned yourself.
Yeah, you're staying in your suburb or staying in your, on your block of the street or whatever. And that's why I always talk about on social, like travel, like
Hmm.
even if it's just outside of your community, to see the way other people live and do it without
Absolutely.
judgment. How and what do your coworkers think about you taking all of this to social media and sharing your stories?
Um, so the people who I've worked with that had followed me really enjoyed it. Um, but I've received critical feedback from people I didn't work with,
Hmm.
from people who were in the field and have been doing this for longer than I've been alive. And how dare she get up there and talk about this and talk about that or make stories? Listen, you go ahead and work your career how you want to. I'm going to center it my way so that I can continue to do the best of my ability, continue
Yeah.
to serve this community how I've been doing. And I think I've been doing a pretty bang up job, if I do say so myself. Um, but the younger generation of this career, I feel like truly appreciates it because they're like, you're showing people what this really is. Like,
Yeah.
I think people just see EMS, emergency medical services, as ambulance drivers.
Yeah.
They come, they pick me up, they take me to the hospital, and that's that. And it's so much deeper than that. There's so much more to it. There can be so much more to it. Some people treat this as a job or a stepping stool or however, you go about it, but this is a career for me. I want to stay here. I don't have intentions of moving out of this field.
Hmm.
So I do tell the stories. I do tell my perspective. I do talk about real life scenarios and patients without, giving away who they are. I
Yeah.
do talk about that because it helps me cope with the things that I've dealt with on a daily basis.
That's what I was going to ask you
Um,
about too. Like
yeah,
what does that end of that day look like when you're wrestling someone into restraints or literally saving their life with Narcan or peeling them off of a couch or a bed because they probably haven't moved from that exact spot for God knows how long. Like what is the download or the touch grass moment after dealing with a day like that?
it's it's heavy. There are days where I've come home and I'm just like, I'm touched out, I'm tapped out, I can't talk, I just want to sit. I don't really want to apply myself with anything right now. But when you do that, you're kind of making a choice to die early is what I'm going to relate that to, right? So when we
Really?
don't communicate those things, when we don't communicate the hardships, when we don't talk about and express things that we've had to experience throughout a day, I think you're killing your brain and you're killing a piece of your soul when you do that, because you're just deciding to bottle all this stuff up, which is why you see such a high frequency of substance abuse,
Yeah.
of really poor coping mechanisms, of high diagnoses for depression and anxiety. Um, and I'm not saying I don't suffer from those things, but I make it a point to talk about those things so that I'm not bringing that home for my family to have to deal with later. Because if that is the case, my kid doesn't know how to deal with that. People who don't work in this field that I associate with don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
How should I expect them to comfort me when I
Yeah.
can't express that to them?
Yeah, they're just like and so many, especially children, they internalize it. I
Yeah.
did something wrong. Mom's in a bad mood because of me. They
Yes.
have no ability to have the perception of, "Oh, she had a bad day at work."
Yeah.
All they know is they're in front of me,
Mhm.
they're angry, upset, or despondent, whatever,
Mhm.
and it must be because of me because the whole world is existing because of me as children, right? Like
Yes.
that's how they see the world. I have actually worked with quite a few wives of police officers who, are having a rough time because of what their police officer spouse sees on the job.
Mhm.
And I always ask them, like, do they go to therapy? Do they seek counseling? Do they have mandatory therapy? And they're like, if they shoot their gun. Is therapy normalized these days in the first responders collective?
Blanketly, I would like to say no, it's not normalized.
Yeah.
I think people in today's generation have absolutely normalized going to therapy. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that you
Yeah.
absolutely should. I would love to see it be a thing where all companies are like, hey, listen, there's somebody in the building or somebody that you can call that is always going to pick up the phone. But a lot of the time, we're each other's therapy, we're each other's therapists, where there's kind of this unspoken, spoken pact that we all make when we get into this. If you've had a good preceptor or a good training officer, where they will tell you, make it a point to find people who are a safety net for you.
Yeah.
Make it a point to have people that you can go to for this. There's a very high divorce rate in this field. There's a very high suicide rate in this field. Suicide rate amongst first responders is very high, but I believe that the current statistic is that EMS is the highest.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, there's a lot that goes on here that if you don't have your people in place, you are going to struggle immensely, and you're either going to pick up bad habits and, spiral your life down the drain, or you're going to figure out what works for you and how to deal with this. But this field absolutely does change people. And I
Well, I mean,
think,
how could it not? I mean,
yeah,
my everyday is, laundry, podcast, clients on the phone, you know, those damn dishes that the brown shit doesn't come off the inside of the pan. Yours is rolling up to dead kids, missing
yeah,
limbs, ODing and, behind a dumpster or whatever, like your everyday is the worst of the people's absolute worst day. You are
hmm,
the first person they see on their absolute, hopefully, worst day.
hmm,
And that takes its toll on any, I mean, how could it not?
yeah, yeah,
But at the
it's
same time, I anytime I've ever needed or, I don't know if you know that I got struck by lightning last August,
no,
and oh, yeah, on the beach in Amelia Island. That was interesting.
oh my
It
gosh,
Yeah, and I just went over, like, a ton of bricks. Like, I was soaked in water. I guess that's what the doctor was like, "That's why you basically didn't die because it just, like, the electricity just, like, stayed on the water because I was soaking wet, and it just traveled, whatever." And so my husband this woman came up to us. I don't remember. I mean, I didn't see anything. And she just kept saying to my husband, he said, like, keep asking her questions. And I will tell you that 100% worked because I would, like, start, like, floating to this gold white light and being
hmm,
super calm and chill, and then Jim would say, like, "What's our dogs' names?" And I'd be like, "I don't wanna tell you our dogs' names, you're so annoying." I was just, like,
you're
having so
interrupting
much
this beautiful experience I'm
you're
having.
you're totally interrupting my gold white space, like, "I'm gonna go over here now again," and he'd be like, "Where did we get married?" And then I'd be like, "I don't wanna tell you where we got married, you're annoying my white space." And so then, like, I'm, like, back in it, he keeps asking me questions, and then he tells this woman, her name was Carol, he's like, "You have to ask her questions, I don't know what else to ask her." And
Hmm,
so she, like, looks up, I guess. My eyes are closed this whole time, and I'm just, like, laying in the pouring down rain, and I'm like she's like, "The paramedics are coming," and my question was, "Are any of them hot?"
that's a fair enough question. If I'm
Right?
gonna stay, can they at least be eye candy?
Exactly. So, like, they come over and they're, doing all the things and whatever, and so they now start asking me questions because they are super annoying and it works, and was so weird because I got severely electrocuted. I stuck a knife in electrical outlet when I was little.
Oh my gosh.
I know, and my neighbor saved me because you, like, magnetize, like, you become a magnet, you can't let go of it, with electricity like that, I guess. And so he took a wood, like, broom or something that was in the garage. I was playing house in the garage and used a knife as a key. And he, like, ripped me off of that, right? So that was, like, back in the 80s. So the paramedics started asking me all these questions, and all of my answers were like 1984. But I knew I couldn't answer that because they put me, like, in the psych ward. So I'm like, my brain's like 1984, and they're asking me what year it is, and I'm like 2020. I think this was 2024. And then they're like, "Where do you live?" And I wanted to say, like, Ohio, but I knew I couldn't answer that. It was so weird. Like, it was so strange. I, like, got zapped back to, like, when I got electrocuted as a kid.
Oh my gosh, that's such a crazy experience.
So crazy. And then, like, I was talking to the one guy who was, like, my main paramedic guy, and I just, like, looked at him. I'm now in the hospital, like, waiting to, like, be put someplace, and I just looked at him, I'm like, "I can't feel the left side of my entire body." He's like, "Not at all." I'm like, "Uh-uh." Like, the whole thing is, like, dripping and drooping, and he's, like, walking over to the doctor like, "She can't feel the left side." I just like, "Please don't let me have a stroke." Like, I just don't wanna have a stroke, like, anything but that. But I'm telling you, like, you remember these people. Like, I remember when my son was life flighted and they strapped me in the gurney and put him on top of me and strapped him on top of me. Like, those are the people you are the people that when you are on your worst day and your husband can't come up with any more questions to keep you from the golden light, that they show up and they just like, they know exactly what to do. They know exactly what to say, like all the things. They push you when you need to be pushed. Like I was like, I'm not getting up. And they're like, you're getting up. I'm like, I'm not getting, they're like, you're getting up and you're going to walk into this car. And I'm like, I don't want, or a truck. It was a truck on the beach. But like, that's what's so crazy is that's who you call,
Mm-hmm.
That's who you freaking call when you're like having your worst freaking ass day.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to be, in quotes, that person,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, you're stuck with all of those visuals. How do you like leave them? Like, how do you go, I did my job, I've left them in the best hands, I have done my thing, and now I'm going to like literally physically wash my hands underwater and leave it there?
So some calls you don't, right? There are some calls that I think you're just destined to keep with you, and that almost feels like an unfair statement to make, but some calls are always going to be with you. And
Yeah.
I most of the time those are pretty like traumatic calls, or they're calls where you feel really good about it. It has to be a call where you had a strong emotion about something, right? um but even I choose to reframe how I look at things, even if I found something to be extremely traumatic.
Yeah.
There was something for me to learn and something for me to take away there, and that's why it's not leaving my brain.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
so
so
a lot
good.
of it is reframing.
Yeah, that's so good. I always think that everything is happening and we can either make it a negative or a blessing. We can either
Mhm.
decide to learn from it and then make it have value, or we can just treat it that it happened. And I don't think anything just happens. I think
Yeah,
everything is meant to like change us or grow us or make us more grateful or whatever the thing is. And I think if you make it a lesson and a blessing, then nothing just is for the sake of being is. I just don't think that's a possibility.
I agree, and I think that's how you have to look at. Um, I think that's how you have to look at calls. I think that you have to be good at categorizing. I think you have to be good at compartmentalizing, not to the detriment of like, I'm going to keep this in forever, not talk about it, and then blow
Yeah.
up later. But you have to be able to compartmentalize effectively. When am I going to choose to deal with how this is making me feel? And it is always going to have to wait until after my patient care is done. I
Yeah.
cannot have a meltdown. If you're having an emergency, I cannot have a meltdown and spaz out in front of you, because I need you to trust that I can take care of you, that I can manage your emergency. That's
Yeah.
why you called me. So
Yeah.
I have to be able to have that ability to put that to the back of my mind and get done what I need to get done to take care of you. And I kind of choose to categorize people into being family members. If this was my mother, if this was my
Yeah.
child, if this was my sister or my father, what would I be doing right now to make sure that I'm getting done everything I need to get done to make sure that they get to the next person who can
Yeah.
do their job well because I did my job well?
Have you ever handed anybody off to like a hospital or whatever and gone, I wish I had an extra like 30 minutes with that person because I don't necessarily know if I feel confident about what's going to happen next?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you have moments where you second guess yourself. You're like, did I do the right thing? Did I follow the right course of treatment? Did I assume correctly that that's what was going on with this person? And part of the way that I try to mitigate that for myself, which I also know a lot of other practitioners will do, is I follow up about that patient. If you're
Mm,
still there by the time I bring the next patient to that hospital, I'm coming to check on you. I'm asking what room you're
mm,
in. What was the outcome? Was there anything I could have done better? And I think that's also how you become a better provider, is asking those questions so that you know what to do the next time. Not
yeah.
every call is different in its own respect, but the next time I have a call similar to that, I can apply what I've just learned today to it and hopefully have an even better outcome than what happened today.
I love that. That's so huge. Those calls that stick with you. And do you have one that just like is your like you take it with you everywhere, no matter where you go?
Yes. Yep.
Which one's that?
That call for me, I was in the midst of wrapping up like my clinical time for paramedic school. So you have to do X amount of hours on an ambulance and in a hospital before you can like graduate from the program. And I needed one more pediatric call. I needed one more kid. And it didn't need to be a specific thing, but I needed one more encounter with a child. And my preceptor, who's also one of my closest friends in this field, got a call. He was a supervisor at the time. He got a call from another supervisor who had been called by like our medical director. That's the doctor that signs off and says, I'm allowed to do what I'm allowed to do. And said, there's a transfer coming out of the hospital. We don't have time to do XYZ. He needs to go to a pediatric center, which would have been like 8 minutes down the road.
Okay.
And he's like, this kid is intubated, which means there's a breathing tube down his throat. Yeah. And we're mechanically breathing for him. He's a trauma patient. And that's pretty much all the information we got. And we were like, okay. So obviously you don't rejoice whenever there's a sick patient, certainly not a sick child. But I was like, the universe must be looking out for me if it knew I needed one pediatric patient. Yeah. And here it is, because this is the end of the shift. And we get to the hospital, and this child is like a 4-year-old child. And he's just like, the way you walk into the doors, it's like double doors, they slide open and the bed is in line with the doors. And he's just looking like dead stare ahead. And I'm happen to be standing right here. And I felt my body shut down. Oh. And I felt panic start to creep in, because nobody wants to see sick kids. Nobody wants to see dying kids. It's the worst thing to see on the planet. And I felt myself start to shut down until I grabbed my arm and my shoulder, and they were like, you keep it together until you're done. Keep it together until you're done. And I said, okay. So we got this kid loaded up. Evidently what happened was this child was the victim of a drive-by shooting. His mother was clutching him, and she went to turn away from the bullet fire and turned into a bullet, and it went through the back of his head. So we needed to get him to the pediatric hospital, because that's the only place that has the resources to help him. And I just remember feeling so helpless, because what am I even doing for this kid? What do you do for a kid? What do you do for a 4-year-old that's been shot in the head, that doesn't have good prospects? What am I doing for this? How am I useful in this situation? And that's when you realize.
Uh-oh, I lost you. I lost your sound. Can you hear me? Oh. We got her back. Let's see here.
Whoop.
There she is. Go ahead.
I don't know what happened there.
It's okay.
But I left off saying, you realize how small you are in the grand scheme of everything that's going around you all the time. And that you are literally just one molecule in the entire universe trying to make a difference. So I felt helpless, and that felt so crushing at the time. And all I could do, squeeze. And I remember feeling how futile that felt. And I was like, what else can I do? And I was like, there's nothing. But this kid's brain is still working. Even if he's not breathing, even if I know his heart is giving out, his brain is still working, which means he's still cognizant of what's going on around him. Yeah. And I instinctively just reached down and I grabbed his hand, and I just kept like squeezing it, because I needed him to know somebody is here with you. Somebody is here in your moments with you. Wherever you're about to transcend, you were not alone in the end, right? That's such an important thing that so many people are robbed of in their dying moments. And I I remember fighting for my life not to start crying in the back of this ambulance because my son was the same exact age. My son is
Wow.
the same size. I can't imagine being the parent in this situation. And again, I was doing my best to keep it together and not cry, but it was so somber because I am a baby fledgling, not even real paramedic yet. And I'm sitting back here with two vetted paramedics who collectively have been practicing longer than I've been alive. And even they are downtrodden by this. It sucks, right?
Yeah.
So you get to the hospital, and by the time we had got there, this child's father had gotten there, and we're rushing this kid into the trauma room, and staff, you can overhear this, staff is explaining to him, hey, listen, we can put a brain tap in to try and mitigate swelling. It's not going to work. We can elect to do nothing and let you sit with him. He's still going to die.
Oh.
And this father is my age, with a son my age, and you are being told that your child, the light of your life, is not going to make it. And what decision do you want to make right now? And like that is what took me. So we dropped this kid off. I stayed for as long as like my body would allow me, but at some point you just start having a visceral reaction.
Yeah.
And I go to my truck, and my preceptor and the supervisor at the time were like, you feel what you need to feel and do it completely and do it unapologetically and let it just come out of you so that you're not taking this home. So I sat there and I ugly cried for probably about 45 minutes. And then I went home and I ugly cried some more because I just needed to hold my kid in that time. And that day I got a tattoo on my hand. That is an olive with an olive branch for a symbol of peace to commemorate that little boy and that experience. And in the hopes and the endeavors that I have throughout this entire career, I'll be able to make some kind of difference that matters. And if I don't do it for anything else, let it be for the fact that that is something I had to witness and have to hold on to for the rest of my life. Let me honor doing what I need to do in order to try and make this world a little less horrific like that for people like my son.
Yeah. I did a whole series on the placement of tattoos,
Mm-hmm.
and the hand is feeling helpless.
Which is amazing because that's exactly how it felt that entire time. And in moments that I feel helpless, that's the first thing I'm looking at is my hands. And what can you do with these to change that? What can you do with these hands to make the situation better?
Yeah. And sometimes you can't fix it all the way, but you make it just a little bit better. I mean, just holding that kid's hand and being that presence in that moment was monumental for everything involved, and being the strong one, even if it was just for that ride and for those moments. That soul knew you were there, and I think that's what you just have to take with you from that experience. Are you afraid, or are you hearing whispers yet of, I don't know where you're located, but the fallout of the Medicaid cuts, and seeing that, how that's going to disrupt the hospitals and or paramedic situation?
Yes. Yeah, that is a terrifying prospect for anybody that actually understands what that will do. So the bulk of my experience doing this has been within urban city settings, and then in suburbs. And now I work in rural country. And though between rural and urban settings, Medicaid is what keeps a lot of people alive.
Yeah.
And when you cut that, I'm going to be going to a lot more cardiac arrests. I'm going to be working a lot harder than I already am now, because right now when you work in the country, you have farmers. As is, they're not calling for an ambulance unless they've cut off at least 3 of 4 of their appendages.
Right.
So that is going to be detrimental because these people are not well off. These people are working class people who are just trying to make it day in and day out. And when we talk about an urban setting where, you know, people have this misconception that poor people and minorities are the people who have Medicaid, and that they're a leech on the system, people think that cutting Medicaid is going to somehow prompt people to go and do better for their lives when people are already doing that. They're doing their best. That's a systematic problem that we're not talking about. But when you talk about that, I need you to understand that people use hospital systems as primary care. They don't otherwise have access to getting into private practices or XYZ, or people wait too long. People don't have access to transportation. It's a much deeper problem than just saying, well, we're going to cut it and people will figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
Or they won't, and they'll die and they'll get sicker. And you'll actually have exacerbated the underlying issues that you need to deal with.
Yeah.
I
know someone that has like one of those.
Get rid of it.
Someone has one of those high deductible plans. It's like $10,000 a year high deductible, but you can go to the doctor once. Oh, you lost me again.
Somewhere. Hold on, stay there. And
it's funny you stop hearing me when your visual comes back on.
I've lost audio with you again. Oop. Can we hear each other yet?
I can hear you.
Okay, there you are.
Yay. But they have like this $10,000 deductible, and I will talk to this person and I'm like, you need to go to the hospital. You need to go to the doctor. And they're like, no, but I have a $10,000 deductible. I can't. I can go to the doctor once a year for free. And I'm just like, you are not a high deductible person. You need to you need to go to the doctors when you need to go to the doctors. You can't sit here and save money. Have they talked about closing hospitals where you're located yet? I mean, is that part of a thing yet?
Sorry, can you repeat that last part of your question?
Sure. Have you seen where they're going to start closing hospitals? Have you heard anything
I
about
lost
that?
audio with you again.
Oh, poopy. Usually when I can't see you,
I still can't hear you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let me see here. Are you there? Can you hear me?
I'm still not hearing you.
Aw. I guess we could close the show. We did talk about a lot, but I did want to talk about a few more things. We'll have to have you back on. I think that let's see here. Well, anyways, thank you so much, Maya, for being on. Go follow Mayawanderlust on TikTok. She's also over on Instagram. She's amazing. She has the best stories. She is a fierce paramedic and mom and fashionista, to be honest with you. So go check her out on all her social media accounts, and I will be back with another guest next week. So I hope to see you there.
Thanks for tuning in to the TikTok Famous Podcast with Meredyth Willits. If you're loving the unfiltered stories and behind-the-scenes truths, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show. Until next time, let's get famous.